slowly. One western diamondback is reported to have survived and grown longer in a wooden box for 18 months without food and water. And a rattlesnake in western Massachusetts lived 12 months in and out of captivity with its face consumed by a white gelatin-like fungus, a Quasimodo in the Blue Hills. The cabin was small, dank, poorly lit. There wasn't a sober individual in the group. Luann thought of deliverance, and all evening she stood by the front door. Smith examined the snake and found 15 quills embedded inside its mouth, which curled back a corner of its upper lip and perforated the margin of the glottis, gateway to the lungs, compromising both the snake's breathing and its eating while protecting the outside world from the business end of the fabled, hollow, and grossly misunderstood fangs. Essentially, the snake's mouth had been pinned open. Although this was a rattlesnake tolerant, if not friendly group, Smith wasn't about to trust any of his less than steady hands to hold the animal. With imaginary blinkers on, Smith worked on a cleared-off coffee table in the middle of the cabin, and the overtly supportive crowd keyed to his every nuance. Smith gripped the snake's head with one hand, pulled the quills out with the other, while the snake's dark, thick torso sluggishly undulated across the coffee table. Slowly, methodically, he plucked each quill with the hemostat, and the men, who had tightened into a knot around the coffee table, cheered, toasted, and chugged. After the last quill was pulled, the ebullient crowd roared approvingly, and the snake was returned to the hutch. 8 years later, Luann, still jazzed by the potpourri of emotions, intensity and images of that night, remembers feeling relieved to have gotten out of there alive. As the couple returned home on the morning side of midnight. So that opens the prologue, and this ends the prologue, which is more or less a statement about why I got involved and what I had to do to make this book, both a PR statement for timber rattlesnakes and not an invitation to go find them and kill them, or catch them and sell them. I go to a certain talus slope above a wild brook to watch rattlesnakes, and I stay until cool weather ushers them underground for the winter. I wish I could lead a field trip to a rattlesnake den. While trekking around remote pockets of the wilderness where they live, I want to educate people about the true nature of the snake, gregarious and docile, and to share the sense of wonder I feel as I watch the last of the Northeast apex predators. Sadly, this is not possible. Lethargic and predictable timber rattlesnakes remain vulnerable to vandals and collectors, and to a new age group called field herpers, who handle snakes, digitally photograph them, and then post their exploits on the internet. Even scientific research and repeated visits by naturalists like myself may cause snakes to bask less, to use less than ideal birthing sites. With the aid of a GPS and a subsequent website announcement, an Appalachian trail hiker who stumbles onto a pod of rattlesnakes and then electronically broadcasts exuberance could be the unwitting agent in the snake's demise. And that would be heartbreaking, because timber rattlesnakes are breathtakingly beautiful. They vary in base color from blackest black to golden yellow. Some are mustard color, others are olive or brown, tawny or twilight gray. Neonates are pinkish grayish shade of exfoliated granite. Timber rattlesnakes have crossbands or chevrons or blotches, sometimes all three, and may be faintly rimmed in yellow or white, and range from black to charcoal to chocolate to tan to olive yellow. Some snakes have a broken rust-colored dorsal stripe, others are patternless black. Coiled in a bed of October leaves, a timber rattlesnake is hidden in plain sight unless it rattles, which is electrifying. Here in the Northeast, den site fidelity is a hallmark of survival. Each fall, rattlesnakes return to the maternal den, as precisely and directly as a bicknail's thrush might return to a particular hillside forest in Hispaniola. When a well-muscled rattlesnake migrates home, it doesn't undulate in loops and curves as it does when swimming. It flows in a straight line, rather like melting candle wax. Belly scales caressing the ground, 1,000 little pseudo-feet, slow, slower, slowest. On a windless afternoon, the vague sound of scales brushing against the ground gives it away. I keep vigil at one particular den, always counting scales, counting black morphs, yellow morphs, young of the year, a 3-year-old, an adult female with a broken 10-segment rattle, untapered, that sort of thing. I note air temperature, rock temperature, cloud cover, wind speed and direction. This year, a few snakes returned to the den in late August. More arrived in September, and the number peaked in early October when I tallied more than 80. One day I followed 2 very big snakes through the rock-studded woods to the base of a towering ledge and then watched them disappear down a crevice. Later in the afternoon, I stood quietly in front of the main portal as more than a dozen snakes slowly passed me by and poured themselves over the stone rim, braided together in the foyer, and then one by one vanished down the abyss. 2 weeks later, I found only 3, including a newborn en route to the slumber party. And 2 days after that, after the fallen leaves had slicked the rocks, 2, of which one, a black male, coiled in the foyer. At 54 degrees Fahrenheit, he was the temperature of the rock, 2 degrees cooler than the air, and he moved his tongue in slow motion. I don't pass winter underground, and I stopped basking decades ago. Those sun-warmed rocks still feel pretty good to me, particularly when the air is cool and the day is short. I go to the talus slopes to watch rattlesnakes, and I stay until the rocks cool off and autumn's last whit of heat draws them below the surface. Like a rain of maple leaves or a flock of migrating geese, the dewing of rattlesnakes in October mark a season in transition, the subtlest of autumnal tides. The snakes in my study site ignore me. I never touch them. I bear witness. My movements ratcheted down to mere heartbeats and breaths. For the most part, they treat me with indifference. One even glided over my boot. A few rattlesnakes living here were born the summer the Beatles released Hey Jude. And I know you guys, well, you guys have got to know the Beatles, right? And it's 1969, just in case you don't know when Hey Jude was released. At least one 45-year-old still bears young. So what do you know? They're long-lived. They're a K-selected species. For their continued survival, I did for this book what never occurred to Carl Kaufeld. So I have to stop for a moment and tell you who Carl Kaufeld was, he's no longer alive. He was a herpetologist that ran the Staten Island Zoo when I was a kid. And he exhibited in the reptile house, he exhibited every species and subspecies of rattlesnake in the 1950s and 60s known to be in the United States based on the taxonomy that was available to him at that time. And he wrote books. He wrote 2 incredibly cool books. One was called The Keeper and the Kept, about raising snakes, and another was called Snakes and Snake Hunting. And when he wrote this book, he was very deliberate in pointing people in the direction and the places he went. And it got to be a real problem. On the positive side, many people my age that are currently herpetologists got their kick by following and reading Carl Kaufeld. He turned them on to the world of herpetology. It was like being a baseball player, growing up to play a man's game. And a lot of people that like to catch snakes as kids read his book, and suddenly it dawned on them that you could possibly make a living catching snakes as an adult. But it also established a career of a lot of snake poachers. And within 2 years of the publication of Snakes and Snake Hunting, herpetology clubs in Philadelphia, New York, and Boston were renting buses to take members down to Okatee, South Carolina to catch corn snakes, because he had such explicit detail on where these snakes were. And this was in the late 50s. So, I did for this book, which didn't occur to Carl Caulfield, I fictionalized the names of several people and places, especially recognizable roads, bodies of waters, and mountains. I also changed the names of a few towns and states. To paraphrase the narrator of a 1950s television show, Dragnet, ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to read is true. Only a few names and locations have been changed to protect the innocent. In this case, the timber rattlesnake. So, I don't know if I'm clever enough to figure out how to get that back on, but I'd be happy to entertain questions. Hopefully that generated one or two. Yeah?
Can timber rattlesnakes be bred in captivity?
Yes.
And if so, can the progeny be used to reestablish population?
Yes. It can be, but it's a political issue. You have to convince people to do it. In order for them to survive, we have to want them to survive. They have everything going for them. I mean, there's habitat for them. They breed in captivity. I have friends that have bred them in captivity, both at the Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence and in southern New Hampshire. It's just that you have to have the political will to say, okay, we're going to bring back this snake. Massachusetts wants to start a colony on an island in middle of Quabbin Reservoir, and I'm a little mixed about it, but because nobody knows whether the snakes ever lived on this island when it was part of the Worcester Mountains. But the fact that they're thinking that that would be a good thing to do is pretty cool. And you could do it, but the senators from the towns around Quabbin are responding to their constituents and have held this thing up in the Senate. And unless people want it, it's never going to pass. But it could be done. It's been done in Sweden with the common viper already.
But
Yes.
You know where they were. I mean, wouldn't it, or is this off limits, this island? I mean, it just,
It's off limits. Yeah.
so you just simply cannot get to it, or?
Yeah, it's Boston's water supply. In the early 1950s, they dammed 4 forks of the Swift River and flooded. If you look at a map of Massachusetts, you'll see this big H-shaped blue lake in the middle. That wasn't really a lake historically. It was 4 branches of the Swift River. And so the state owns it, and they moved out 4 communities. All the land around it, the state owned and protected. But people do fish the shoreline, but you can't take a boat in there. But people freaked out. They think, well, the snakes will swim, which they do. But they're really not aggressive. I've been taking my kids since they were 5 years old with me to watch these snakes. And unless you stepped on it or were not paying attention to what you're doing, you don't really run a risk.
And what's the European or Asian, the Asians, is it a delicacy? Are they keeping them for the skins? Are they keeping them to have the snakes?
Pets because they're pretty.
Or
Pets because they're attractive. I mean, people do eat snakes. I've eaten Western diamondbacks. It tastes like chicken. Essentially like a toasted ball. And it's kind of cool because they come pre-equipped with toothpicks. Their ribs are just like a bunch of curved toothpicks. But yeah, people do eat them, but that's not the reason they're having problems. It's really roads and killing or collecting are the biggest issues. And this really insidious flesh-eating fungus, Ophidiomyces ophidiodicola, is digesting their carrot.
in the dens that they do know about, they can't be relocated without.
No, because they choose their dens based on 2 things. They have to be able to go below the frost line. A big adult male is as thick around as my forearm. And so you imagine if you have a couple hundred snakes in some of these historically big dens, you've got to have passages this big to get them below the frost line. There's not a lot of things like that. So when you look at those maps that I was showing, that's why there's dots in New England as opposed to broad brush strokes. They're not everywhere. In South Carolina, they can be everywhere because the frost line might only be this deep and not that deep. Yeah.
Have people tried to make dams?
Somebody in southern New Hampshire is trying to make it, but you've got to get them below the frost line. And then they also choose dens based on the angle towards the sun. Most dens are on the south side in rock piles or frost or pressure cracks in the bedrock facing south, southeast, or southwest. I've never seen a den facing north. And you know the heat-sensitive pits in their cheeks, which they use to strike prey, it's so sensitive they can detect a 1,000th of a degree centigrade temperature difference. It's believed that those first evolved not so much to find food, but to find the proper ways to get out of the desert heat, so they wouldn't cook. And they use those to find the dens, and that's somehow they're able to read the temperature coming out of the crack in the ground or the spaces in the rocks to know what works and what doesn't work. Yeah.
You mentioned that a female, pregnant female may go for a year or 15 months without eating, and males eat all the time. Any idea why that is? It seems like a really weird strategy when you think, most...
They have to bask. It takes about 90 days at a body temperature of about 85 to 92 degrees to give birth. So she's going to want to lie in the sun. That's what gets her body temperature up. So she's in the shady woods looking for a mouse. She's not lying in the sun. I mean, she may eat just before she starts basking or after the birthing, or she may not eat at all. And that said, the biggest mortality factor in females is starving to death in hibernation the winter after they gave birth. Yeah, most females in a population live to birth only once. Even though I told you there was a 45-year-old female that was giving birth, she birthed I think 7 or 8 times. That's not the norm. That's unusual.
So do the females grow a lot faster up to maturity? So they're not
No.
bulkier and higher fat
No,
reserves?
what I haven't told you is that females don't breed until between the ages of 7 and 13. It takes that long to get that big and store that much fat. Males might breed at 5 to 7. It doesn't take a lot to make a bunch of sperm. And males breed every year, surprise, surprise. Females may breed every 5 or 6 years, or 7 years. Yeah.
What do rattlesnakes do for ecosystems, like for beneficial?
Well, they're a predator. They're a predator of small mammals, mostly, occasionally ground nesting birds. They're part of the suite of things like red-tailed, red-shouldered hawks, short-tailed, long-tailed weasels, timber rattlesnakes, black rat snakes. They're all feeding on small rodents. And when you have outbreaks of Lyme disease, one of the reasons you have such big outbreaks of Lyme disease in certain places is because you have a lot of white-footed mice. They're the principal reservoir host of Lyme disease. They also happen to be the principal food of timber rattlesnakes. Where you have a healthy population of timber rattlesnakes, like Glastonbury, Connecticut, you tend to have much lower incidences of Lyme disease per 100,000 people in the population. In Colchester and Manchester, Connecticut, also on the Connecticut River, no more rattlesnakes. There's much higher rates of Lyme disease there. It's not to say that timber rattlesnakes will control Lyme disease. They're just one of a lot of factors that play in to eating these mammals to keep their populations in balance, so the disease that we occasionally get is held in balance. It could be the single biggest selling point of not whacking the timber rattlesnake, is what it eats. I knew somebody at the University of Maryland that did research on timber rattlesnakes, and he was studying 3-foot timber rattlesnakes, wanting to know, based on what they feed on, what the approximate number of black-legged ticks would be eliminated from the system. And he used 2 dietary studies, one in coastal New Jersey in the Pine Barrens, and one in eastern Connecticut, or eastern Pennsylvania in the Poconos. And he did some work with biologists in Millbrook, New York, that was studying the tick carrying loads of average white-footed mice. And then putting all this stuff together, he determined in a breeding year in the Chilcotin Mountains, in the mountains of Maryland, a 3-foot male timber rattlesnake will eliminate, just by virtue of what it eats, between 4,500 and 6,200 black-legged ticks. Not bad. I'm sure if you did that with short or long-tailed weasels, you multiplied that by several exponential factors, because they eat a mouse a day or more. But I think all these things working together would keep Lyme disease in check. And Richard Ostfeld, who studies Lyme disease in Millbrook, New York, has come out and written a book pretty much saying that it's simplified ecosystems where you have the biggest problems, like our backyards. It's not in the woods. Well, thank you guys.
Just one last quick question.
Sure, yeah.
I've heard stories where the rattlesnakes will gang up with other species.
Mhm.
Have you seen that?
Yep. Yeah. Generally, the snakes that they den would not up here because we don't have copperheads, but down further south they den with copperheads. Up here in Vermont, in the foothills of the Adirondacks, their principal companion in the dens are black rat snakes. Occasionally big milk snakes.